Hello and welcome to True Crime Diary, in which we look back through the annals of true crime to discuss events that took place on this week in history. I'm your host Mark Decano, and with me as always are my friends Jed Lester.
Hello.
And Rue Turner.
Hello.
We want your reviews. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a review and preferably 5 stars. And if not, you can always email your review to us at stuff@truecrimediary.co.uk or through our Facebook page or Instagram account. And links to all of those are available on our website www.truecrimediary.co.uk. And in appreciation of every 5-star review, we'll give you a shout out in a future episode. So the date we're looking at this week is the 17th of January, and on this day in 1950, a gang of armed masked men stole $2.77 million in cash and securities from the Brinks building in Boston, Massachusetts. The robbery was called the crime of the century.
That's pretty bold.
Is Brink's the name of a bank or a building?
It's a securities firm, like a transport firm. You remember we talked about Loomis Fargo?
Oh, yes. So there's various...
Yeah, it's an armoured car operation.
Depots.
And, that sort of thing. Yeah. So this is
in various countries. So which one are we... We're talking about the one in 1950.
Boston, Massachusetts.
So which one did Rue research all
Not
week?
again.
Just so I know.
The Brinks Mat robbery, 1980s in the UK.
I mean, to be fair, if you type in Brinks over here, meaning in England, I'm assuming Brinks Mat would come up first, and that's clearly what happened. I presume that's true.
Yeah, I blame my researcher.
So there's
Did you not research the 1981 Brinks robbery in New York?
What do you mean? There was another one?
Yeah. Did you not research the Brinks robbery of 2008 in Washington?
You'd have thought that one would come up first, if we're going...
Brinks are having less luck than Loomis Fargo.
They're useless.
Yeah. Well, if you do make your living running around with massive amounts of cash...
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. They've probably had at least 4 robberies, but I bet they've foiled, I don't know, dozens.
Yeah.
They know it's coming.
Absolutely.
I assume they do.
They're making a bit of a bold claim by calling it the robbery of the century when you're only in 1950.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a bigger one than this for at least 50 years.
I predict. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there were a lot of caveats. There's brackets thus far.
The Brinks robbery was a crime of the century. It excited the imagination of the youth of America. It was our solemn obligation to prove to them that crime does not pay.
So hang on, at the time it was the biggest, was it?
Yeah, well, it was the largest robbery in US history at the time. But they took 1.2 million in cash and 1.5 million in like money orders, checks and securities, so on. So combined 2.7, which in today's money you're talking about $30 million.
It's all right, I suppose. In 1950.
All right.
God, yeah.
The plan went so well that there had hardly any clues left behind. It was a 11-man team. It's a very professional job.
Wow. You'd think out of 11 men they're going to leave something behind.
Yeah. Well,
Men are forever leaving things lying around. We're not the tidiest of creatures.
Now, in the other robbery money heist episodes, it appears that it's always an inside job. What was that? What was it?
Yeah, there's always someone on the inside opening a door or
11 men
pressing a key into a piece of cheese.
Brinks.
Yeah, they were bullion handlers.
Yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, it was not an inside job. Right. There was none of this team were employed or employees of Brinks Incorporated.
I always think it's a bit like, when it's an inside job, because it's like, nicking from your employer, and it's just a bit...
No imagination.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a bit pathetic, really. But when it's planned to the nth degree exterior-based robbery, I think, good on you.
Absolutely.
I don't think...
Not that we're suggesting you'll get our admiration.
No. But it's just...
It's not yours.
It's more... I don't know. Is it more impressive? I mean, it is a bit, isn't it?
Well, it is impressive. I mean, I suppose you could kind of think sort of Ocean's 11, but more sort of...
Yes, which was made up, but it was exterior... Yeah.
It was an exterior gang who planned
to the nth degree,
until they got
exactly.
it absolutely 100%.
Right. Sure, yeah.
I never seen it to plan. I had no gift for strategy.
Think Sinatra Martin.
Sure, that one.
not Clooney.
Unlike Ocean's 11 in that it's interesting to read about.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was meticulously planned. I mean, it was so... They were so careful about it that they planned it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And even then, when they actually made the attempt on the 17th of January, when they got away with the money, that was the 7th time that they had made the approach to do it, and they'd aborted 6 times before they...
Right, so they just, at the last minute, went, cancel, Control, Alt, Delete. I wonder what the... have you got details of the plan?
Yes. So they spent weeks planning and
Sure.
sort of just going over and over. And what's made it even more interesting, that one of my favourite parts of it is early on, they managed to get their way into the building by basically removing the locks from the doors one by one, and making keys for the locks and then putting the locks back.
So over a period of weeks, or months.
Over
or
a period of weeks. And yeah.
See, it's not something you can do quickly, is it? Take the lock out, take it away.
No.
So it's not a question of borrowing the key to make a copy.
Yeah.
It's
not pressing it into a bit of soap.
It's changing the
They
lock.
took the locks, yeah. Yeah. Time after time after time, after closing, after everyone had left for the day, they'd break in, basically, and then they would take the cylinder out of the doors, and then they would go to a locksmith, and he would make keys for them, and then they'd put them back. And they did that for 5 doors.
It could have so finished or been rumbled or been ruined.
Absolutely.
by one of the... How many were involved?
11.
By one of them could have gone, actually, do you know what? While I'm in here and no one else is around, and it could have just at any point been absolutely, that's the end of that. Because someone thought, I can't be bothered to wait another 7 break-ins for this. I'm going to nick a bag full of stuff.
Or some of these really good pens.
Yeah. Oh, damn, it's on a chain.
Yeah. Or just go in and just move all the filing cabinets around. That'll mess them up.
Yeah.
So what they would do, they would break in, someone would stay on the premises while another gang member would take the lock away. They had a locksmith shop that they had basically got him to stay open late. So they knew that the officers would go home at a certain time. They had the locksmith open late, and then they went round and said, "Hello, it's us again. Can you change this lock?" And it's just basically made keys.
Just kept on doing that. Yeah.
Go get those keys. Go get them. The keys.
So they basically had 5 locks. They now had the keys to 5 locks that would get them from the street all the way into the vault room.
But then, of course, you've got the vault.
And then, of course, you've got the vault.
That's not the kind of lock you can take up the road to a locksmith.
That's why you start with that, the first one.
I mean, I've got a picture in my head of someone with a stethoscope and a very steady hand.
Yeah. Or you could just go in with guns, surprise them at the vault, and say, "Open the vault, or we'll shoot you."
Right. Oh, this is where they poured petrol over them and asked for the numbers. Oh no, wait a minute, that's the Brink robbery.
He's getting them mixed up.
Wait a minute.
Guys, some complicated job, isn't it?
It was a huge job. I mean, they would plan. This was about a year.
Wow.
Before they went in, I think maybe a year.
How much did they get in the end? A couple of million?
2.7.
2.7, okay. But so it's worth the effort if you think about the salary that you're earning.
Well, yeah. I mean, £pounds per hour. I'd retire on it.
Yeah. Even now,
especially now.
Well, yeah.
Let's say in current parlance, that's about $30 million. Now, even if I never paid any tax and never got a pay rise, that's 1,000 years' salary for me. So yeah, I mean, it's all right. Even divided by 11, that's still that's nigh on 100 years of money each. You could live high on the hog, put it that way.
Yeah, you could, couldn't you? Yeah.
The guy who came up with the whole plan was Big Joe McGuinness.
Of course he was.
Okay.
And he brought in a couple of characters named Stanley Gus Shiora,
Yeah.
and a fellow named Tony Pino.
Frankly, no one thinks you'll pull it off.
Who's no one?
Everyone.
Right. Okay. So is that? So they were in that racket anyway, were they?
Oh yeah, these are professional.
Right. Okay.
Heistmen.
Iceman.
So here's a few of the people. So you've got these are some fantastic names. You have to imagine I'm doing a lot of air quotes here.
Yeah. Sure.
So some of the other people were called Vincent Costa, who was Pino's brother-in-law, Michael Vincent Vinnie Geegan, Thomas Sandy Francis Richardson, Adolf Jazz Maffey,
I know why he changed his name, but anyway, yeah.
Henry Baker, not as much fun.
What, no quotes?
Not even a the in the middle.
Henry the Baker. James Guillemet's Farity.
Guillemot.
Guillemet's.
Is that his nickname?
What did you name?
Guillemet's, yes.
You named him after the seabird.
Not Guillemots, Guillemet's.
Oh,
Is that his
I don't know what that
nickname?
means.
That's not a nickname.
That's his nickname.
Gilly.
It is.
Gilly. But not
Gilly.
Gilly. Anyway,
Awesome.
carry on.
Joseph Banfield, and the man with the best name and one of the key characters
Yep.
for later on is Joseph Specs O'Keefe.
Hey, Specs, give me the bag.
I mean, it sounds like the anthill mob, frankly.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Uh-oh, there's the policeman again. Quick, make like the Little Leagues team.
You got
I'm
Big
going
Joe,
out.
Specs, Gus, Vinny, Sandy.
It could be from
Jazz.
the Beano.
I'm going out on a limb to suggest that he wore glasses.
You reckon?
He might have been
we-
speculative in finance. I mean, he was, let's face it.
Well, yeah.
I speculate this robbery.
Of course, we're assuming they're Italian, but taken from the
They
accent.
sound as if they
Hey,
have roots from it. Hey, Vinny.
New York Italian. We're based in
I
Boston.
know we are. I'm just...
They're all New York. Hey, Specs, what are you going to do?
It's more Irish in Boston, isn't it?
Give us your best Boston Irish.
Not even gonna go
No,
there.
no, walk away. They were studying the schedules. It was said that they knew what the staff were doing purely based on which lights came on and when they went off. They knew what they were doing. That's how close they were. They could stand across the street on the roof,
Sure, yeah.
watch the windows, and they go, right, oh, so they've got the two guys doing this and he's going over there. They know what they were doing.
You've got to know the internal layout and what people do each day really well for that. haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. So they had someone monitoring from the rooftop across the road. They stole the plans for the alarms on site. Basically, they'd been planning this case in the place for nearly 2 years
Right.
before they went in. After 6 attempts, January 17th, 1950, in they go.
In full.
Banfield was the driver. He was in the front of a truck. And then who went in was Tony Pino,
Tony Pino.
Specs O'Keefe,
Specs O'Keefe.
Baker, Farity, Maffey, Gus Shura, Geegan and Richardson.
So quite a few went in. Mind you, did they have an idea what they were going to nick? Or were they just going to steal whatever
yeah.
was there?
They had an idea what would be there, but they were basically going in to get whatever.
It could have been, I don't know, 10 times that at one point in the month. And then £4.23 on a last Tuesday kind of. I mean, they presumably knew that, but...
If you've been casing it for a year, though, you know exactly
Sure,
what's
okay.
in there.
Yeah, they would have had a decent idea. They're
You
never going to know
what time
exactly.
of day, what day of the week,
Yeah,
when stuff's moved, where it goes to when it leaves, where it's coming from.
yeah. Not only have they seen people coming and going and vans pulling up and cash and that being whatever, but they've been inside. They've seen what's where.
Right.
In the van, they've all been given a heavy coat and a chauffeur's cap, so they make a uniform appearance.
Yep.
They've all been given a pistol and what's described as a Halloween-y style mask.
Oh.
Basically, it's a rubber mask.
Was it Michael Myers?
It was not, no.
But not that Halloween.
Oh, a bit early, really, for Michael Myers, aren't we?
Yeah, a bit early. I mean, it looked. I think, you might say Tony Curtis-y.
I think it is, but
Yeah.
I don't know whether Tony Curtis was... I think he was a big star by then.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was going to say he looks a bit like Victor Mature, but I think you're more right with Tony Curtis.
A quiff.
If Tony Curtis and Victor Mature had a love child, I think
It would
It's a
look
bit,
like a Halloween mask.
It's a bit...
it would.
It's a bit Superman-y. Superman was about that time. But
Apparently, it's Captain Marvel from a comic book series.
did they all have that one?
They all had the same mask.
They all had the same one? Right, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's confusing.
Well, that's
isn't it, when
good.
you see
That's what you want, isn't it?
all the same
they
person
all look
coming
the same.
in the room.
Yeah.
Okay.
They all had gloves and they had their shoes covered to muffle their footsteps,
Okay.
so they could sneak in. They used their keys, whacked on the masks, and in they go. They got straight to the second floor and took 5 Brinks employees completely by surprise.
Everybody be cool, this is a robbery!
Is this during the day?
Wow.
This is in the evening, about 7 o'clock.
Oh, okay. So it's,
Okay.
Right, okay.
It's end of the day. They're finishing up.
Yep.
So they're ready. They're pretty much ready to go home. So they tied and gagged the employees and started going through the stuff, basically, bagging everything up.
Yep.
So by stuff, is this just lying around in the office?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
They're not in a vault or anything like that.
I think the vault was open because they were putting the money away for the night.
Perfect timing then, I guess.
So they don't even have to bother.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
They bagged up all the loot, and before they went, they saw there was a metal box that had the General Electric company's payroll in it, and they tried to open it, but turns out they didn't bring any actual tools with them.
Oh.
So they couldn't get in after all their meticulous planning.
Well, I suppose
they brought in the masks and the guns. It didn't occur to them they might have to break open something.
Yeah, see, cash I can understand, gems and stuff like that, and bonds I can understand. Yeah. Bullion is obvious.
It's obviously difficult.
But stealing checks, I just don't get.
I don't understand.
How do you steal a check for the Boston Jazz Club and Aunt Mabel's Christmas present to her daughter? I don't understand. You can't. What are you going to do? Open up a bank account by the name of Aunt Mabel?
Mr. B. Austin Jazz Company. You're going to. How would you do that?
and then pay in the $17.37 and then close the account.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure checks work very differently in the US than they do over here.
Well, they're even spelled differently.
Well, that's true.
People from the Czech Republic.
I don't think they would have lugged bags and bags of stuff.
No, I mean it was substantial.
Don't think, it doesn't mean anything. I don't think 70 years later, knowing nothing about the. Anyway. They drove. They got in the van and drove away.
In the van, drove away.
Yep. Okay.
Money. FBI turns up, obviously. So they find. What did they find?
11 rubber masks.
They found very little, to be perfectly honest. They found the rope, obviously, that was used to bind the employees. They found the waterproof adhesive tape that they'd used to gag the employees, and one of the robbers had left their chauffeur's cap behind. So basically, they rounded up the usual suspects. Well-known criminals in Boston were questioned by police, and then obviously from Boston they weren't getting any results, so they basically spread out to other cities, and they just said, like, pick up anybody who can't account for their whereabouts, or veteran criminals. It just went all across the US.
So they didn't have any leads at all.
They had pretty much nothing. I mean, they had a lot of suspects, but no reason to suspect them. Just basically,
they were
this
just
guy
trying to.
He's a known mobster.
He's a wrong anyway.
He's a wrong un.
Okay. He's a wrong un. Yeah.
Feel his collar.
Yeah.
Feel his collar. There's a lot of collars feeling going on.
Right.
Brinks Incorporated offered a $100,000 reward for information. And of course, that meant millions of Americans.
I was going to say that opens the floodgates, basically, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Did that come with the usual caveat of that leads to an arrest?
More if it led to a conviction.
Wow.
But yes, of course, lots of well-meaning people, millions of well-meaning people, suddenly started sending tips and theories.
Yeah, sure.
And
a literal wealth of information.
But not useful information. One helpful person from California suggested that the loot might be concealed in the Atlantic Ocean, for example.
Yeah, let's go search.
It'd be in the sea.
Touch every ravine, every crevice.
Out of all of these leads that are not going anywhere, all these people who've been phoning up saying, look in the sea.
Of course, yeah.
For example.
I mean, I've got no sympathy for that, because it's like, if you're going to say $100,000. If you're going to say that, then you're just going to get all manner of every nut
bag on this
going.
Yeah,
I saw it.
Yeah, exactly.
Aliens stole it.
Yeah.
Well, despite all the nut jobs coming out of the woodwork, the name of Anthony Pino comes up.
Tony Pino.
A few times.
Uh-huh.
To be fair, it might have come up anyway.
Well, it has come up, and the reason his name has come up specifically in the case of the Brinks job is because he has a reputation among Boston criminals as a case man, someone who's good at planning jobs like this.
Yep.
And by accounts of those interviewed, this job bore his trademark.
Okay. And a few people mentioned his name or something, probably.
Yeah. His alibi was that about 7 p.m. he went in a liquor store, which was run by McGuinness, another of the gang, and got involved in a conversation with McGuinness and a Boston police officer.
Okay, so that was true, was it?
That was true.
So
he
both
was
of those, Big Joe and Tony P, were not involved in the nicking of the stuff.
They were there because actually it turns out that the liquor store is about 15 minutes away from the Brink offices. So they've basically established their alibi by talking to the local beat copper.
Deliberately,
but they could still have which, as far as the Boston police are concerned, might have been a good enough alibi. But the FBI pointed out
arguably that's not an alibi.
Yeah,
is it? That just places him near the scene of the crime.
Yeah, so if he's chatting with a copper for 15 minutes, he could, and then 15 minutes to the offices, he could be there by 7:30.
Yeah. This second the officer left the shop. Yeah.
If I were going to create an alibi, the last thing I'd want to do is an alibi 15 minutes from the scene of the crime.
Well, exactly. You want an alibi in another state, don't you?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But his name's come up, so obviously they go, okay, this is a known hoodlum. This sounds like it might have his MO. He's definitely in the area because he was having a chat with a copper. So he might have been involved even if he wasn't there. So they start looking into him and they're picking up names of the people who, they might have been known associates, In June, because they've now got O'Keefe and Gusura on their radar, they drove to Towanda, Pennsylvania, where they were pulled over and they found guns and clothing from burglaries that they'd been involved in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
In September, O'Keefe is sentenced to 3 years and Gusura was acquitted, but he was taken to stand trial for another burglary and receiving stolen goods and things, and he was sentenced to serve between 5 and 20 years in Pittsburgh. So both of these two key gang members are now in prison. So these two guys apparently are trying to press for money. They're asking people like Pino, McGuinness, Jazz Maffey, etc.
Adolf.
They're asking Adolf. They're looking for money to fight the charges, to go mount a legal fight. O'Keefe clearly thought that now that he was in jail, he wasn't getting a lot of attention. He wasn't getting any money. So he thinks he's been left out in the cold.
Okay.
So O'Keefe was out on appeal in March of 1954, released on a $15,000 bond.
Okay, so it's quite a lot of time has passed.
A lot of time has passed.
Yeah.
He goes straight back to Boston. He's waiting for his appeal.
Yep.
Within the next 2 months, Jazz Maffey was convicted for income tax evasion.
Okay.
9 months in prison.
Yep.
Income tax evasion?
Yeah.
Isn't that what Scarface got arrested for?
Exactly, yes. Quite right.
They always get you on that.
Yeah.
Never the murders.
No, never the murders.
Luckily.
Just all that tax you avoided. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. But the point is, all the gang members are all being... The FBI think they know that this group of people was involved.
They did it, right, yeah.
But they've got no evidence, They even, at one point, they tried to convene a grand jury, but it fell apart because they just basically didn't have any evidence. So they've tried, they're not getting anywhere because they've been so careful. However, it's slowly starting to fall apart because people from the gang are being found guilty of other things.
Sure.
Burglaries, tax evasion, they're all being picked up, they're all being put under pressure.
To squeal. That's a
yeah.
That's a term. I don't know whether you knew that.
Yeah.
I ain't squealing.
Now, of course, the rumour mill doesn't do any favours for this group because everyone's talking about the gang, the crime, and all of these people in and out of prison. And there's a lot of rumours going on about people having money or not having money and who's got what share. So, of course, it's all adding to the fire.
To the tension. Yeah.
O'Keefe's been in prison trying to get money for his legal battle.
Yep. Unsuccessfully.
Oh,
that's gonna not help, basically, is it?
Yeah, you feel pretty frustrated when you're inside as well, I should think.
Yeah.
Because you don't have any control over anything when you're inside.
No, exactly. Now, something interesting happens because O'Keefe met up with a local racketeer him and O'Keefe took Vincent Costa, one of the other gang members, to a hotel room and basically held him there until other members of the gang offered to pay him some money. He ransomed one of the gang members to the other gang members.
What do you mean? He kidnapped a gang member?
Yeah.
Why would the other gang members go, okay then?
Well, exactly, yeah.
Well, because he's unstable. So you pay up. You pay up to shut
if
up.
somebody's out of the picture, then there's another.
Exactly.
Another
Yeah. Why would they care? Unless I'm.
Well, Costa is Tony Pino's brother-in-law, so it's important to Pino, obviously.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
See, the thing is, O'Keefe is obviously now he's becoming unstable, and there's only two ways you deal with an unstable gang member, isn't there? You pay them off, or you knock them off.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Right.
Now he's asking for the.
He's
former,
asking for money.
The former. Yep.
So they make arrangements to pay him some money. They give him a small amount. They didn't give him the many thousands he asked for. They give him some. He gives him, and Costa in May, Costa was released. Now, in June, after a couple of weeks, suddenly there's an attempt on O'Keefe's life.
Yeah, what a surprise! Let me guess.
What
it
a
was
surprise.
via Costa-based angle.
Well, there's a car pulled alongside O'Keefe's car.
Oh yeah.
And in the morning on the 5th of June. Now, O'Keefe, seeing his car pull alongside him, he gets a bit suspicious. So he crouched low down in his front seat of his car.
Yep.
And the next thing you know, gunshots coming through the windshield.
Wow.
I was saying, I can't see you, you can't see me. Doesn't really work.
Doesn't
with
work with
bullets.
bullets. No, exactly. He survives. They
miss.
They fire into the car. They miss. He's crouched down. He's out of the way.
I mean, to be honest, by the fact that he crouched down, would have expected this because, I mean, if you try to pull off that kidnapping of your apparent colleague, it doesn't. It's not all warm handshakes all round, is it? It's like, as you say, it's a payoff or knock off, basically. Yeah,
and I'm reminded of Loomis Fargo again.
Oh yeah,
you remember when Gant went to Mexico?
Yes, and then he wanted some money. Yes,
he wanted some money.
Yeah, and they wouldn't give it to him.
And they wouldn't give it to him, but they did try and have him killed.
Yes.
Yeah. No honour among thieves.
There's a pattern. Yeah.
So on the 14th of June, there's another incident. O'Keefe and his friend, this racketeer, this local guy, they paid a visit to Baker. Now, by this time, Baker, he was right on edge because he's heard about all this back and forth, obviously. Now, he pulled a gun on O'Keefe, and the two of them basically fired at each other. Both missed, and they fled. There was a fleeing.
They flee. Oh, good. I like a fleeing.
Love a good fleeing.
I do like a fleeing, yeah. They didn't just run away, they flee.
Yeah.
It all unravels, doesn't it? Even in that world of untowardness, the criminal underworld, it will still psychologically unravel. And someone somewhere will feel uneasy or anxious or, unjust. And unjust was, done. And this is exactly what happens. It seems quite a lot of time had passed, though, hadn't it?
Yeah. Now, there was a third attempt on O'Keefe.
Really?
2 days later. 2 days after the encounter with Baker, which arguably they went to see Baker, and Baker was just terrified. So this time was another attempt where someone attacked O'Keefe on the 16th of June. O'Keefe was wounded in the wrist and the chest, but managed to survive. There was a .45 caliber pistol left at the scene, which may or may not have been O'Keefe's, but a man was arrested the next day. Elmer Trigger Burke, he was called.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, he was charged with possession of a machine gun, or they should say submachine gun, but nonetheless.
Do we know what kind of submachine gun was?
We don't, but in 1954, I'd say it was a Tommy. I would say it was a Tommy gun. Yeah.
I would imagine it was, given the
it
era.
Had to be, really.
Yeah.
Now Trigger Burke was a professional killer.
It's like if I was him, I'd be like, oh, for God's sake, can't you call me something else? Can't you call me?
Don't call me Burke.
Call me Bagel Burke or something, because I'm great at cooking bagels. It's like, don't call me after my murderous.
And for those across the pond, the name Burke in the UK means an idiot.
He's an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah. You're a Burke. You're an
Or
idiot.
an Edinburgh murderer.
Yeah.
Now he's obviously they believe that he's been hired by O'Keefe's associates to assassinate him.
I think that's quite a good suggestion.
It's a good guess. Yeah. So O'Keefe, having been wounded, he disappears, but he's then arrested on August the 1st. So like 6 weeks later.
It's all go, isn't it?
It's all happening. Yeah. Now he's held for violating probation for carrying a gun.
Yes. Right. Okay.
And he's then sentenced to serve a further 27 months in prison.
I would argue that he would have been not too displeased about that, because he kind of would have been taking him out of the loop, so to speak. You know, to be not exactly safe in prison, but do you know what I mean? Just to be kind of like out of sight, so to speak.
I mean, but these are all professional criminals, and
Sure.
if,
It doesn't matter where they are.
If the episodes of Law and Order are to be believed, it's probably easier to whack somebody because they can't get away.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Or that might be a fiction for the purpose of drama.
I think it is.
Who knows? So now the fact of the matter is, by the time of 1954, the whole gang is independently spending loads of money just on legal proceedings,
Right.
without anything else.
Unconnected
Yeah.
for other cases.
For other cases, yeah.
That's annoying.
Obviously, they've all got their legal problems. They've all got money issues, even though they've still got this robbery money. They've clearly been sitting on it because they can't identify any of the bills.
Of course they can't. Yeah.
Right.
It almost appears that there was, what's the point?
Everyone's on edge, but the one who's basically on the brink is
Thank you very much. See you next week.
is your friend of mine, Specs O'Keefe.
Hey, Specs! He's psychologically quite anxious because people are trying to knock him off. But
yeah, number one, because he feels like he's been left out in the cold.
He can't be in a good state, can he?
He's not in a good way. He's had at least 3 or 2 specific attempts on his life and a run-in with another gang member in which shots were fired. So things are getting very tense. Everyone is anxious about it. Now, he's still writing letters from his cell to the other gang members. He's bitter. He's asking for money, obviously. Mm-hmm. Eventually, he's the one who's going to be turned in and say, okay, he turns to the FBI and he says, all right, what do you want to know? I'll tell you everything.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So January 1956, he breaks, finally.
So he thinks, forget it.
He seems prime, really, to be the one that squeals.
This is interesting. So does he squeal on 10...
Finally, all of a
10
sudden.
others?
On the 10 others, yeah.
Wow,
he turns over everybody.
Wow.
So 1956 January, they arrest 6 people. Baker, Costa, Geegan, Maffey, McGuinness and Tony Pino. And they are set bail, which is more than $100,000 per man.
Wow.
So, which is a lot in 1956.
It is,
a lot of money.
By the way, I presume nobody was paid the 100,000, whatever you call it, ransom.
No.
No.
Not ransom.
Because nobody knew anything. It was only them, that 11, effectively, didn't it? I mean, if anything, Tony, what's he called? Specs McGinty, or whatever he's called, should have been paid the $100,000 because he...
Specs McSavers.
Because he provided the evidence that led to 10 convictions. In fact, should he have been paid $100,000 per conviction, and therefore there's £1 million? Thank you very much. Good night. Why didn't I do this earlier? But he technically should have been paid that, but I suspect there was a loophole.
So 6 members are in custody.
Yes.
Now 3 of them were accounted for. O'Keefe and Gus Ciora, obviously, they're in prison. Mm-hmm. Banfield had died by this point, so he was.
Was he?
He'd passed away, and then that leaves 2 people: Faherty and Richardson. Now they fled.
Did they?
Hey.
Good.
They ran away. They were put on the 10 most wanted fugitives list.
Run away.
Until May the 16th, when they were finally caught up with. 5 months later.
Is that 10?
That's the lot.
That's That's it. That's
11.
That's all of them.
Right. Okay.
And O'Keefe, so they're going to be going up for, I guess, the grand jury, and O'Keefe was principal witness, obviously.
Oh yes, he was. Yeah.
In June, a Baltimore police officer,
Baltimore
police department.
It's miles away.
It is miles away.
Yes.
Baltimore. It's in Maryland.
It is.
Or Maryland. The police department was
Maryland.
approached by an amusement arcade operator.
What?
Mobsters used amusement arcades for laundering money quite often,
Really?
didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of churn of cash
Yeah,
in there.
of
Small
course,
change.
yeah.
So this amusement arcade guy, he goes to the police, say, "I think I've been handed a counterfeit $10 bill."
Okay.
They find this guy in possession of a large amount of money,
Right.
and they're saying it's not counterfeit. However, it does turn out that some of this money may be from the Brink's loot because of the serial numbers. So it's purely by chance that this guy erroneously reports he has a counterfeit bill. Turns out it wasn't counterfeit. Not only was it not counterfeit, but it was part of the Brink's job.
Ah.
The point of it is that this is the only money that's turned up the whole
Okay.
time.
The entire thing.
It's
yeah.
this money that this man had.
Yes.
They actually turned up about $50,000 ultimately by following this lead.
Wow.
But that still left more than $1 million just in cash.
Yeah.
alone,
Sure. Yeah.
Unaccounted for. Now, Gus Ciora, who was in prison, he in July of 1956, he was in the medical wing of the prison in Massachusetts. He got up out of bed and he slipped down, fell and struck his head, and within 2 hours he was dead. So that's the second one down. So he's now dead.
We're down to 9.
With Gus Ciora dead, O'Keefe now is more determined to see justice done by putting everyone else away. Obviously, with him as lead defendant, you've now got 8 members of the gang to be tried.
Yes.
So O'Keefe had already pleaded guilty, so you've got 8 going to trial.
Quite a lot happens in 1956 on this case, doesn't it?
It's busy. It's a busy time. There are more than 100 people, witnesses for the prosecution, but the main one, of course, is Specs O'Keefe, who's basically just gives every tiny detail from start to finish
Fine.
of everything that happened.
Because he's decided it's in his interest to do so.
Yeah.
And also he's like,
Proper squealing.
you know, he doesn't like any of them anymore because they tried to do him over.
Yeah, exactly. The jury deliberate for 3.5 hours, and then when they come back, it's 8 guilty verdicts.
Right, okay.
And they get a mixture of between 8 and 10 years, with 2 years here, 2 years there for conspiracy, but they all get about 8 to 10 years for robbery. O'Keefe got 4 years. Now, one thing, Trigger Burke, he escaped from jail in Boston.
Did he?
Because of the gun possession charge, the possession of the machine gun from the shooting of O'Keefe.
Yep.
He separated himself and from the rest of the prisoners during an exercise yard period. Mm-hmm. Basically, the guard went to stop him, and Burke broke into a run. And when the door opened, there was a masked man on the other side holding a gun.
Right.
And the masked man and Burke escaped through the door, and they got away in a car.
I wonder if he was wearing the Tony Curtis mask.
I just want him to be.
Yeah, I know. All right, it might not have been Tony Curtis, but whatever that mask was, several years previously.
Yeah, this would all make a really good movie, I think. This would make a super movie.
You'll be pleased to know that Trigger Burke was subsequently arrested in 1955 and executed for outstanding murder charges.
Oh,
really?
Yeah.
Blimey.
No, well, he was a known killer. He was a hired killer.
Right.
He was a gunman.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
his job.
I mean, to be
So
fair,
he
if you're called Trigger,
Yeah. So it's funny, Roo, that you should say this would make a good movie. Because it's made 4 good movies.
Wow.
of that particular Brink's episode.
Of or inspired by.
Yep.
All around a short period, actually. 1955, there was a...
God, so that's before this case was stitched up then?
Yeah.
Because if they were still in court in 1956, this is This is fresh,
exactly right.
You know?
Exactly right. They haven't even been picked up on it.
I'm
yet.
not sure that would happen these days. They'd do a film about it before they'd even been fully convicted.
There's films about D.B. Cooper. He's never been convicted.
Well, all right. Okay, all right, fine. I mean, it's not.
There's films about Jack the Ripper. There's plenty of films about Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
He's never been convicted.
All right, fine.
It's fresh. It's exciting. It's a robbery.
Yeah,
what
no, I
happened?
know.
Who's
I
there?
know. They'd have loved it.
So the movie Six Bridges to Cross, and just because their names come up, guess who is the star of Six Bridges to Cross?
Well, it's not Tony Curtis, surely.
It's Tony Curtis.
No, really?
Yes.
I would argue that that's definitely in then. That mask.
That's come full circle.
That's
that has.
bizarre.
Serendipitous.
Wow.
Tony Curtis and Julie Adams, directed by Joseph Pevney.
Wow, very good.
I have to see this movie now because I just want to see Tony Curtis pulling off of his head a Tony Curtis mask.
Yeah, of course. And 11 others. Yeah.
He's the only one who looks exactly the same after he's pulled his mask off.
So 1961, there's another movie called Blueprint for Robbery. Then there's one called, in 1976, there's a movie called Brink's The Great Robbery, which has Leslie Nielsen is in that one.
Oh, really? In a serious role?
In a serious role.
Very good.
And in 1978, my personal favourite, The Brink's Job. It's kind of a comedy. You can tell it's got Peter Falk in the lead.
Okay.
It's directed by William Friedkin, and it also features Warren Oates, Paul Sorvino, Peter Boyle, Gila Rowlands. Great.
Yeah. Paul Sorvino and Peter Boyle. That's pretty... So Peter Falk... So, sorry, do we know who Peter Falk played?
He plays Tony Pino.
Oh, okay. Right.
Okay.
He's the lead. It's a really good movie.
This is the one that's based on the book.
Yeah. Again, I mean, if this podcast only recommends great movies to watch,
That was really good.
The Brink's Job is a fantastic
Is it?
film. I'd absolutely recommend.
Is
it.
that pre-Columbo?
I think it would have been about the same time, 78.
Okay. Don't know.
Columbo ran from 68 to like 2000 or something.
God, did it?
This went forever and ever.
Just one more thing.
So it was about the same time, yeah. But yeah, fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Why
movie.
is it
Peter
good?
Falk is great in it. Because the actors in it, the characters are fantastic. It's a great story.
Yeah,
it's a great
sure,
story.
yeah.
When I'm not reading it.
Intertwining.
And Peter Falk, Peter Boyle, I mean, they're absolutely fantastic actors. And Peter Falk in himself is even playing Peter Falk. He's a character.
Yeah,
so it's
sure.
But it's really well done.
Right. But you suggested it was a kind of comedy drama or something.
It's based on the story. It's a heist movie. It's not a...
Right, okay. Small town crooks.
Yeah.
Hey, guess who was in that? Mira Sorvino. And we've come full circle.
The Brink's Job. A crime so insane, nobody in their right mind would go in on it. And nobody in their right mind did.
That's all for this time. If you want to know more about what we've discussed over the course of this episode, just Google it or something. You can see daily true crime updates on our Facebook, Twitter or Instagram. You can email us or you can support the show with a PayPal donation. And links to all of those are on our website at truecrimediary.co.uk. Don't forget to send us a review or post one in your podcast service if you can, and all 5-star reviews will get a shout out on a future episode. Join us next time when we'll be similarly discussing and digressing on another event in true crime history. Until then, my thanks to Jed and Rue. My name's Mark, and we'll see you on the next date in our True Crime Diary.